I'll be reading this today. I don't have a teleprompter, and I don't intend to try and fool you into believing I'm not reading this. So if you have a problem with it, I'm sorry. But the message is too important to miss one salient point. So let's just get with it. I know I promised to address in this vlog ancient Israel's constitution and how it is applicable today, but something has come up that I deem much more important. It is a warning, a harbinger of things to come. There's a large storm brewing off the coast of Louisiana due to hit this weekend. There are all kinds of warnings out there by the Weather Bureau and by politicians grandstanding to get some FaceTime on TV. No doubt the storm is going to hit and there will be gross amounts of property damage. Sadly, there will be loss of life in the floodwaters because there are people who ignore the warnings, thinking they can outfox Mother Nature. It amazes me how many people ignore the warnings. But the weather isn't the only warning we ignore. We have a very bad habit of ignoring cultural warnings, which can be and often are much more severe to the destruction of this great nation than a hurricane can be. For example, we had a warning back in the 90s about to what extent the left would go to bring late-term abortions into the mainstream of our culture. The warning came from an advocate of infanticide, a bioethicist and professor at Princeton University, Peter Singer. This warning came to us in the 1990s in an article from the Washington Post. I want to quote from the Post Peter Singer, and Singer's words will be highlighted in yellow. Quote, Singer often claims that his views have been misquoted, so I am quoting directly from his book, From Practical Ethics. Human babies are not born self-aware or capable of grasping that they exist over time. They are not persons. But animals are self-aware, and therefore the life of a newborn is of less value than the life of a pig, a dog, or a chimpanzee. End quote. Okay, what he's saying here is because babies cannot feed themselves or care for themselves, they are not really persons until they can. Let me ask you a question. How old was your child before he or she could care for themselves? Were they 10, 12, 15 years old? This is insane. But Singer is not finished. Quote, from the Should the Baby Live, that's a book he wrote, it does not seem wise to add to the burden on limited resources by increasing the number of severely disabled children. Okay, what he's saying is, if the newborn has a disability, then killing it should be done without question to save money and other resources. How many babies have been born with a disability and went on to lead a productive life? But Singer and his colleague Helga, and I can't pronounce her, Akushi, I believe it is. Sorry, Helga. But Singer and Helga are not finished. Read this carefully because this is where we are today in the Democratic left. Also in the book, Singer and his colleague Helga suggested that a period, and hear this now, a period of 28 days after birth might be allowed before an infant is accepted as having the right to live as others, end quote. Okay, so the baby is born disabled, or maybe it cries too much, and the parents have decided they just aren't up to the task of raising a difficult child. The answer? You have 28 days to decide if you want to murder the baby. This was a warning, and now it is fact. After the baby is born and viable, you still have the right to abort the child. That's just a euphemism. Abort the child is just a euphemism for murder. You have the right to lay it on a shelf and let it die. Oh, of course, I understand they're going to make it very comfortable while it's laying there dehydrating. This warning was in 1999, and it once again made the news about 10 years ago. Unfortunately, too many people ignored the warning, and now it is a legal solution to unwanted children in at least 2 states, which is a harbinger of things to come. Now I know what you're thinking. 10 years ago you thought this was just some kooks trying to get attention and sell books. Nothing was further from the truth. This was a warning. We were warned and we did nothing. Now viable babies are being murdered on a daily basis. Now to today's issue. We are getting another warning, another cultural warning, that something is coming that the vast majority of Americans don't want and are appalled at even the notion or idea that this would become legal and mainstream. We should want to know, where is this warning coming from? And more important, why is there no one listening? And why is there no one shining the light of day on this harbinger of perversion that is coming down the train track at rocket speed? This warning is coming from TED Talks. Now if you're not familiar, TED Talks is a symposium where people get together and they bring in an expert and they talk. TED Talks identify themselves this way. TED Talks are influential videos from expert speakers on education, business, science, technology, etc. End quote. Now, they have a big platform on YouTube and millions of watchers, so they do have a great influence on our culture. Let me give you this warning in a word: pedophilia. Now this is from an article by Laurie Arnold from ChristianHeadlines.com. Here is a 2-minute clip from TED Talks, and I want to break it down so you can understand what this woman is saying.
I want to quickly summarize where we are at the moment. According to current research, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation.
First, she says, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation. Now otherwise, what she's saying here is that pedophiles have no control over their thoughts or their actions. They are born that way, and they can do nothing to curb their urges to desire sex with minors. Wow! Did you hear that? Nothing they can do to curb their urge to have sex with minors. Now we heard the same canard about homosexuality, that it is in the genes. Hopefully you didn't buy into that lie, and you won't buy into this one. Then she goes on to explain that pedophilia is no different than heterosexuality.
Just like, for example, heterosexuality.
Now this woman is either a complete kook, or she's a pedophile herself and is having urges and desires she doesn't want to control. It would be interesting to discover the truth about her. Then she says, no one chooses to be a pedophile, and no one can cease being one.
No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster.
This is appalling. I don't know what to say about it. If this is true about something so horrific as pedophilia, then the same could be said about any other urges which are outside the mainstream of moral, ethical thought. Such as, I have the urge to murder, steal, etc. I don't choose to be that way, but I just can't help myself. So you all need to get over and accept me for what I am while I murder your family and steal your property. Now wait for it, she isn't finished yet.
Right now, most of us feel discomfort when we think about this scenario. And most of us feel discomfort when we think about pedophiles. But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them. But we are responsible for our actions. And we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles.
Again, she's saying we're not responsible for our feelings. If we aren't, then who is? You know, your congresswoman? Or how about your senator? Oh, I know. It's Trump's fault. he's responsible for everything else. Now there's more insanity to come.
And to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life.
Did you hear again what she said? It is our responsibility to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect that we treat others. Now what she's saying is your negative feelings about pedophiles are unjust. They're just people like you and me, and they need our respect. You know, the same respect that you give maybe your father, your mother, maybe your doctor or your pastor. In the final analysis, she's saying they are just people with an uncontrollable urge they can't do anything about. The bottom line is, if you don't accept them, then it is your fault if they rape your neighbor's kid. Next, she wants you to understand that child abuse and pedophilia are not the same thing.
We shouldn't increase the suffering of pedophiles by excluding them, by blaming and mocking them.
She's saying that pedophiles are suffering, and if you don't accept them, then you are increasing their suffering. Wow, I never realized that. Gee whiz, would I dare want to cause a pedophile to suffer because of his actions? You know, she's saying you're nothing but a dirtbag lowlife if you cause them more anxiety. You know, how could you be so insensitive? Now she ends up with this salient point.
Excluding them, by blaming and mocking them. By doing that, we increase their isolation and we increase the chance of child sexual abuse. Only if they make themselves recognizable, because they're not afraid of punishment, of anger and rejection, can we better understand the causes of pedophilia and we can improve their treatment.
If you don't accept them and they rape your neighbor's kid or your kid, then it's your fault, period. Well, there you have it. A warning, a harbinger of something to come. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to pass this on so others will be warned? That's the least you can do. Are you going to call your senator, your congressman, and demand laws be strengthening against this horrific perversion? If you don't heed this warning and do something significant, pedophilia will be the mainstream in 10 years, just like infanticide is becoming mainstream today. You have been warned. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.